Welcome back to Adventures in Freeze Drying for Beginners. We're going to really quickly get some chicken noodle soup started. And so I'll tell you all the ingredients, we'll get them added to my pot, and we're gonna let this simmer for 4 to 6 hours, and then I'll be back to tell you what to do next. One thing I've been saving and just putting in the freezers, we have some home butchered chickens, and I've been saving the backs and like the breast bone, like after cutting the breast meat off. And so I'm gonna put all of these with the bones right in my stock pot here. This is a very large stock pot. I already have 24 cups of water in here. So we're going to put the chicken in. We'll deal with the chicken breasts later. My husband likes a good hearty soup with lots of meat in it, but you wanna start the broth with just those bones and chicken. I did leave the skin on. We will deal with the fat that's going to cause later. Then I have 1 pound of carrots that I've already cleaned and chopped because they were store-bought. I did skin them. If they were homegrown, you may not want to. Then an entire stalk of celery cleaned and chopped. 2 medium to large yellow or sweet onions chopped. An entire bulb of garlic chopped. That was like 13 cloves. 2 tablespoons of coarse sea salt, 1 tablespoon of ground black peppercorns. I'm going to add 8 whole basil leaves. I'm going to add 2 fresh from the garden sage leaves. I have 4 dried bay leaves, and I have part of a bunch of parsley left that I don't really want to worry about pulling off of, but it'll add flavor to my soup. So I'm just gonna add this whole bunch of parsley, and then I'll just pull it out when it's done cooking. Whatever falls off, but we'll pull the stems and stuff out when it's done cooking. And then same thing with my homegrown oregano. I've got a couple sprigs of oregano here that we're just gonna go ahead and dump in there. I'm gonna get all that stirred together, put it on my stove on low heat, and let this simmer again for 4 to 6 hours. And then we'll get back together. Okay, our stock has been cooking on low for 4 hours now. It's boiling when the lid is on. When I take the lid off, it does stop. So I'm gonna go ahead and add 4 pounds of chicken breasts, and then we're gonna let this continue to cook for another hour. And I'm just gonna plop those in there whole. We'll cut them down once they are fully cooked, and I'll see you in another hour. I've gone ahead and removed my chicken from my broth. I'm leaving the majority of the vegetables. And what I'm going to do is put my broth in the freezer overnight, so that way the fats and everything will solidify on the top and I can pull those off. The less grease that goes into the freeze dryer, the longer term storage I will get. My broth sat overnight in the refrigerator, and now most of the fats are solidified on the top. I'm going to go ahead and use a spoon to skim those off of the top, and then we'll move on to cutting up my chicken. I have gone ahead and already cut my chicken up into very small bite-sized pieces. For this to rehydrate quickly, you're going to want your bites of chicken to be on the small side. The larger the bites of chicken, the longer it will take for them to rehydrate, and it will take them longer than anything else in your soup. So go ahead and make sure you keep those tiny. For any of the chicken on the bone, I just pulled that off with my fingers and made sure it was in small bites. I have gone ahead and added my chicken and my broth back into my large stock pot and put this back on the stove. I have brought it to a boil. And next, we are going to add 2 1-pound packages of egg noodles. I normally make homemade egg noodles, but this time I decided to use some store-bought. You will only want to cook the noodles until they are al dente. I'm just a little undercooked. When you rehydrate, you don't want your noodles to turn mushy, so having them just slightly undercooked will keep them tasting better when you rehydrate your soup. I realized when I started to tray my soup on a parchment-lined tray that I was worried that it's going to be too heavy. This is a very hearty soup, and to get a full tray, I'm going to be over my 2.5 pounds, and I have lots of soup here. So I will be putting 2 cups of soup in a baggie and laying it flat and doing 2 baggies per tray, and I will freeze in the baggies and then cut them off before they go in the freeze dryer. My soup is frozen solid, and the tray that I just poured soup into has the lid on it. And then I put my pan, because the lid has the stackers, I put my pan on top of it, 2 bags, stackers, 2 bags, stackers. That way I know they're frozen flat and will fit on my trays. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those unbagged, and then they'll go in the freeze dryer. If you don't care if your soup is pre-portioned or not, this tray freezed beautifully. Just watch the weight as you put it on. You're not going to get 6 cups of a hearty soup on here. It's over the 2.5 pounds. But if you made sure you only had 2.5 pounds of soup and you didn't want it pre-portioned, this is a great way to just have a bunch in a bag or a jar where you take some and you would just rehydrate it. This, for me, I'm going to try to put in bags as like a meal for 2. A cup of soup this hearty is actually quite a bit of soup. So 2 cups is probably enough for a meal if you have other stuff with it for 2 people. So these I'm going to, when we store them that way. And this will probably either go in a jar or just a bag where you would dish some out for yourself. My chicken noodle soup said it was done. Right around 29 hours for a cycle time. I'm gonna check this with, this concerns me. It's only showing like 68. Yeah. This definitely has some cool spots in it, and it's cold to the touch. So I don't think this is done. What I'm going to do is take my middle trays and move them to kind of cycle stuff so it's in a different spot in the freeze dryer. This one's even cooled to the touch, so this is definitely not done yet. I'm going to close that up. I will close my drain valve, and I'm going to go ahead and add 12 hours of dry time, because I'm not going to be able to get back to this until morning. So, well, this went for longer than intended. I actually added 14 hours of dry time yesterday to get me to morning, and then I missed that, so I turned this on for another hour to get things warmed back up so I could check to see if they are completed. We'll check this full tray. Everything is 85 or warmer. So I am going to say that one is completed. Check this bottom one here. And I'm also not getting anything below 85. So I'm going to call my soups done. I will see you when we go to try to rehydrate this. I'm going to get these bagged up. It has been a couple of days since I pulled my chicken noodle soup out of the freeze dryer. I even left it in those 2-cup blocks that I freeze dried it in. Let's see what it's looking like. You can tell it held its shape well. You can even see where the broth is. I thought that might completely disappear, and it really didn't. So let's see how this rehydrates. As I bring my water to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and kind of break this up a little bit. It's just like styrofoam, so super easy to break up. And I'm going to put this all in a bowl. Note 2 cups isn't even going to really fit in my bowl. It's really filling it up here, and I have about half of it left on the plate. So we're just going to go with half of it for right now. I brought my water to a rolling boil in my instant tea kettle here, and I'm going to add an entire cup of water to this. Look at how it's just melting. The broth is like melting right away and rehydrating. The noodles are obviously going to take a little bit longer, as with the chicken and maybe even the veggies. Although they're already getting kind of soft, that's not taking terribly long. So I'm going to stir that up a little bit. And then we're going to cover this and let it sit for 5 minutes. It's been about 5 minutes, and that's actually looking pretty good. The chicken feels pretty tender. The noodles look like they should look in a soup. I went ahead and I did this other bowl as well, so I would know how many cups of water I would need if I wanted to rehydrate the whole bag. This is probably not quite as soupy as I would like, but this one's a little more soupy, so 2 cups of water for my 2 cups of soup. Should have been plenty of water. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of making homemade chicken noodle soup, but there is a scent that's associated with it. And my mom made this when I was a kid. It is like the smell of coming home. The chicken seems super tender, so I'm gonna get a bite with some chicken and some noodles and some carrot in here. This, you cannot tell it was freeze-dried. This is excellent. So if you're looking for something that you can rehydrate and nobody would know, you could send this to a friend who is sick. Like, this is awesome. Highly recommend chicken noodle soup. Thank you for joining me at Adventures in Freeze Drying for Beginners. We'll see you next time.